It's episode 58 of the Improv London podcast. I'm your host, Stuart Moses, and this week's guest is Jules Munns.
Hello.
Hooray.
58 episodes.
58
We're just saying as we set up, that's... Like, not that long ago, that would have been the entire improv scene done. Do you know what I mean? That would have been all of the people talked to, oh, well, I guess I'll do a podcast about knitting or something.
Or it's like the fourth bridge. You can just go back to the beginning and do them all in order. Because things sort of changed in the year or half or whatever it's taken to get this far.
Yeah, you could get them to listen to their own podcast and then say what they agree and disagree about with themselves about sort of 18 months ago. I recorded Chris Mead's YesBot podcast about, I don't know, 3 or 4 months ago. Which, I don't know if you listened to any of it. Yes, so the format is you have to program an improv robot with the 5 commands that would make it the perfect improviser. Is it for you to watch or for you to improvise with? I can't remember. Or maybe to turn it into you as an improviser. And we recorded it, and then 2 days later I had to call him up and say, Chris, I disagree with myself. Please don't release that. We need to go back and record it again. And he was a bit of assault with me after that. Obviously.
And often, one might say, rightly so. But these...
Absolutely, a lot of work goes into these things.
Yeah, exactly.
He's got all these fancy microphones.
Yes, he does. So, what is your official title at the nursery?
I know this is all a bit in flux at the moment, because for a long time, Judith and I would both say co-artistic director, but she is less... improv isn't necessarily her chosen first art form. She's an actress. So that, as we've grown in the last 6 or 8 months and taken on more staff members, the definition of the roles has become more important. So I think my current title is artistic director, and she's now, it's hilarious when you get this grandiose, she's now chief operating officer, and then you have 2 other co-artistic directors, Chris, as previously mentioned, and Heather. So the 3 of us do the programming, and then between Judith and I we do the practical stuff. And then there's managers of other bits and pieces. So I think that's currently how it stands, but I'm sure the website is out of date.
Right, okay. So exciting times for the nursery.
Mm-hmm.
We see the opening of a new space.
Yes.
Tell me about that.
It's something we've been working towards for ages, and we have always been kind of careful about the amount of information that we release, because obviously, as with any sort of new business project, there's a lot of false starts, but if that's not something that you're used to, it looks like a lot of times when things didn't go right, which of course it is, but in the spirit of improv, we've come very close to opening a theatre space, I reckon, like 5 times, and obviously, as some of your listeners will know, we're using the Edric Theatre in the Suffolk University for just under an academic year, and this came along because this delicatessen were talking to British Land, who own the space that we're working in up in Broadgate. And British Land were very excited about what Theatre Delicatessen had done before, and very interested in the way that they use buildings and the meanwhile space use and all that stuff. But Theatre Delicatessen's primary sort of artistic output is experiential theatre, and British Land and Broadgate Estates, the management company and the owners, specifically wanted something auditorium-based, because I guess if you're outside of the theatrical environment, that's something you can understand more. There's a stage there, there's a bunch of people there, and they sit and watch it there. So there's Delicatessen, who we'd spoken to a couple of times before about different buildings, which either didn't come off for one reason or the other, approached us and said, well, you're auditorium-based, would you like this room? And now we have the lovely Nursery Theatre Broadgate, which is very fancy and exciting. And I'm sure I can put some links out with this, with pictures of it and renderings of the exciting new bar, which is being built this very evening.
And the bar is themed around, is it a treehouse?
Yeah, it's like a...
because naturally I associate alcohol with tree houses.
With children and heights. Well, yeah, right.
It's the classic combination.
So the original we were just talking about what we wanted the place to feel like. One of the things I think is lovely about the improv community, but also dangerous about the improv community, is it feels super friendly, and like once you've been to one event, you're one of us and you're part of the big improv hug. And of course the danger of that is the kind of exclusivity of it and people feeling like, oh, I have to break into that and all that kind of thing. So a treehouse was a kind of a joking touch point for how we wanted the place to feel. A place where you're, a little bit up and away from the world, you've got your milk and cookies, no one else can reach you there. And then that became a literal kind of thematic thing without me knowing it, because our designer, Greg, and Chris, who was involved in a lot of this stuff, started using this in the kind of concept sketches, and suddenly, it's treehouse themed. And I don't think necessarily if you walked in you would go, oh, it's a treehouse, but it's got that feel of like knocked together from different bits of wood, and friendly and cozy, and nooks and crannies to sit down in and have your beer with your new friend that you met during the opening front.
So, what's the new space? I mean, I know because I've been there. but for anyone that hasn't,
but thanks for teeing me up.
But what's it like? What does it allow you to do that you perhaps couldn't do without it?
Yeah, right. So I think most of us who are kind of at the heart of the nursery project come from a theatrical background rather than from a comedy background or a sketch background. So one of the things that we've always wanted to do is make something which is a theatre. Not necessarily that you only doing po-faced, tight-assed improv, but...
although there is room for that.
Although there is totally room for that, and that, we'll be programming as much of that as we possibly can. It's giving the full facilities for improvisers to have space to move, and the lighting and sound setup that's going to really allow them to do something which feels like a show rather than feels like something above a pub, because many great improv shows happen above pubs, and some of them have very well equipped stages and are in fact basically a theatre above the pub, like the Miller, and some of them a Grand Theft Improv still at that place. What's it called?
The Wheat Sheaf.
The Wheat Sheaf in the centre of London. I think they are. But they performed there for, I think, a decade or something. And there's some of the best improvisers in the country on a stage which, when all three of them were on it, was really crowded. And where if you wanted to cool the room down in the interval, you got to open the windows behind the stage and remember to close them again to stop the sound coming in the second half. And they did amazing, wonderful shows. And that was when there was very little improv about. So we wanted to give a full theatrical environment. So the new space is it's a black box theatre with curtains along the back, lighting rig with colour changes, and a programmable board and all this stuff which you can do cool stuff with, and proper patched in sound, so we can stick 3 or 4 instruments on stage and put them back into the desk at the back very easily. There's a little bar in the back. It's just kind of cozy and homely. Oh, and one of the things that I'm really delighted that we have is fold-down cinema-style seats, which probably don't make that much difference to the general audience experience, but to me it all just feels like we're making theatre here, and that means we can make attempts to do certain things which are not possible in other rooms. Again, and just to stress, with no judgment about some of the amazing places where improv happens. It's just opportunities to do things which haven't been possible up until now in the UK. Yeah,
and if everyone was doing improv in one particular way, that would be very samey and very dull. So it's great that there's diversity and people are approaching the same art form, but emphasising different things and that sort of stuff.
Right, and that's one of the great things in the last 5 or 6 years, I guess it is, with Monkey Toast and the Free Association, the London Improv Theatre, and the growth of Hoopla, and a bunch of great teachers and stuff that I haven't mentioned in that list. That now it's not do you do improv, it's which improv do you do? Oh, you're a game style player. Oh, you're a clown style player. Oh, you're an organic style player. The fact that people are able to have those conversations means that we can... It's like saying, oh yeah, I like cooking, all of it. You're like, no. Do you like like complicated French sauces, or are you a stir-fry wizard, or do you like pickling things, which I used to really enjoy doing. It's not quite cooking, but
What's your favourite thing to pickle?
I really like pickling cucumbers. That's very satisfying. I also love making sauerkraut, which I guess isn't quite a pickle, but kind of in that way.
I'd say it's in the...
It's in the category.
Yeah.
I made my own sourdough as well, like from the start, from getting some yeast and getting some flour and waiting for it to go off, and then waiting for it to go off some more. And that's basically how you make sourdough, it turns out. Wasn't very successful, but I did it. And I hope one day I'm not saying that about the nursery theatre. Didn't work, but I tried.
So let's talk a little bit more about this what the nursery theatre style is. I mean, can you define it? What?
Yeah, it's a really interesting question at the moment, because I know we have less of a constructed program that you pass through levels 1, 2, 3 at IBC or whatever. And I know that some schools have very strict programs, some have a more kind of branching tree. I guess I find it difficult when you're describing styles of improv not to say a bunch of things which are true of all improv. Because actually, I like organic improv. It's like, well, improv is sort of inherently organic, because I guess organic is in opposition to planned, but maybe not. In terms of what I can talk about, which is one of the things we want to do in the new theatre, is putting on shows which have one of the things about giving a show a theatrical setup and a theatrical process is you're putting on shows which have a time span, they have a lifespan. So we start rehearsing there, we finish rehearsing however many weeks or months later, then we do this many performances, and then that's it. Yeah. Which is a model which we've which has happened in London on a few occasions, but that's something that we will be rolling out from the autumn. We used to have it at the Edric, and that kind of fell apart. But that's something we've stolen from the Hideout Theatre in Austin, Texas. And I think that has there are two interesting sides to that. One is that you can have the costumes and sets and sound and lighting design and all that kind of theatrical coherence or artistic coherence and branding, which is much harder to do if you're a Herald team or a freeform team, or, again, no bias against any of those things. I'm on a bunch of teams that do those things, but it's nice to have this other area. And the other part of that, I think, is that when you join an improv team, there's that weird feeling of, oh, am I just in this forever? Is this just what I do on my Tuesday nights now? And if you are in a team that's been together for ages and ages and expects to be together for a long time, you need to find the show which is going to make everyone happy. Right? The show which everyone really desperately wants to do. And that's not possible. There's always going to be people who like or dislike the shows that you're doing. And the lovely thing about a kind of described length show or theatrical show, rehearsal, performance, finish, is you only have to agree enough for that length of time to throw yourself into it. So you're like, I'm going to do this for a bit, and then afterwards we stop. End of November, we stop doing an improvised horror or whatever it is, and then I can go back to doing what I do with my other teams, or I can go on to a different project. And so it's got a personal advantage that you don't have to be constantly seeking consensus, and a professional advantage that you get to go, all right, let's do this thing for a while and see what we learn from it. And then let's go back to open form or free form or montage or Herald or one of those more less restrictive forms, and find out what that brings back to those kind of shows. So that's the style of production, which of course that won't be everything that we do, but that's the way of producing shows which we want to make at the core of our programming. In terms of the style of the performance of the improvisation, it's organic as opposed to gamey, I guess, relationship based as opposed to gamey, I guess. Again, following the impulse rather than the obligation, which again is sort of a description of improv, right? I don't imagine there's any improviser who would listen to that and go, "No, I disagree with that. That is a terrible way to do
must
improv."
Follow the obligation.
Yes, I must follow the duty, the crushing, soul-destroying duty, like a soldier in, I don't know, some part of the British Empire where no one wanted you to be there, which is all of it, I guess.
Regardless of whether the performer is enjoying themselves or the audience.
Yes, exactly. We will follow duty. But, I mean, I'm being facetious. Yeah, so organic, freeform, theatrical, emotion-based, relationship-based. But I think it's always with the intention that shouldn't make us tight-assed. Right. I don't know if I'm sure I've mentioned this in some class because I've talked to you quite a few times. The guy who was the head of acting at the drama school I went to, like Christian, he would always say, and he had a proper old Alan Rickman voice and face, actually, sort of like hangdog jowls thing. He would say, "Act with loose arseholes." And I sort of feel like that's a great improv maxim as well. Improvise with loose arseholes. There's a title for you for the podcast if you title in that way.
Yes. And another advantage of having the fixed run things is that levels of commitment and things like that.
Right, of course. When we had when we did a few of these at the Edric, we were able to get members of the Showstoppers and Ostentatious and stuff to come down and play in a totally new format, which is great.
So, what can we look forward to in the new theatre? Can you?
Well, the summer program is all published. Everything came around a little bit faster than we expected, so there hasn't been time to put on nursery originals, which is what we call this program of stuff for the summer program. Although we just finished Sonder, which was not quite a nursery original, but which operated. Sorry, Sonder is the name of the company. Neverfolk was the name of the show. It's been in my head as Sonder for so long that, which operated pretty much on that basis of Sonder is a 3-person company. They invited some other players to play with them, created a specific show, and that played last week. So that was the closest we have to a nursery original in the summer season.
It's sort of nursery original adjacent.
Yeah, exactly. I think we haven't formalised the relationship, but Sonder will almost definitely be associate artists in some form, I think.
What I loved about that was the way in which it took the emotion play nursery original and just kind of took some elements of it, and then and some of the elements were sort of the grounded reality relationships, and then just made it a little bit more fluid and just, because the thing with emotion play was all one location, wasn't it, through different eras.
Yes, that's right. Yeah.
Which was really interesting. But then it was also interesting to see these folk tales that could go anywhere and had the props and that sort of thing. So
it was a really lovely show.
Yeah.
So if everyone didn't see it, it was the first, I guess, 10 minutes. I never timed it, but about that was an improvised folk tale, and then the rest of it was scenes based on that coming to a final group scene, which I think generally brought you back to the moral of the tale. And there were lots of things in that show which which are rarer in the London scene. So there's organic transitions and physical mirroring and all this stuff, which is sorry, I shouldn't say no one. That's absolutely not the case. There are several great companies doing it, but that's part of the whole. Well, we already threw our shoulders behind this show, and doing 3 nights in a row allows you to develop and get further with that stuff, because the people who were doing that show haven't done that style of show before, so there's artistic development for them as well. But to your question, in terms of shows that are coming up, what have we got over the summer? Obviously, when you open a theatre, you get to play on the stage fairly frequently. So Heather and I are doing a 2-person show, 10,000 Million Love Stories. The Maydays are doing Happily Never After, the Tim Burton themed show. Impromptu Shakespeare are doing their thing. We have Scott Adsit visiting and playing some scenes with the audience, and some scenes he's putting together a team of people that he knows here, which is, I don't know, I don't know who they are yet, which is exciting. We have a couple of Edinburgh previews, Katie Shute and Maria Peters doing their thing. We have, and then just lots of lovely improv troupes. We've got Troopless and The Committee and Big Now and all these Classic Andy, all these just lovely improv troupes who are who've sort of knocked round the nursery and been performing at Thursday Night Lights, and we're now able to say, yes, we can give you a, I don't know how much I like the term main stage, but you know, kind of a weekend slot to come do your thing. And I'm also I've got a show with the most ridiculous title ever. It's called The Society for the Improvement of Mankind in All Its Flaws and Wonders, which is, I don't quite know what it is yet. It's mostly forcing me, I wanted to create a show which requires no rehearsal. You just rock up and do it. So it'd probably be a little bit directed from on stage, kind of Keith Johnson style. But I wanted to create a format which is interesting and fun and dynamic, but doesn't have any of the, which is a little bit directed, but doesn't have any of the theatre sports competitive element to it. Because while I fucking love that stuff, some people are less comfortable with it, particularly if they have a kind of Chicago training background, and you don't want people to clam up. So it's like, hey, come play with us. You don't have to get used to anyone, because the whole thing's kind of directed and looked after, and it's not competitive, so you don't have to do that, but just come and play. So.
Wow, that sounds exciting.
So that's our summer season, and then we just opened, about 3 days ago, we opened the applications for the Nursery Originals directors for the autumn. I think from inside the nursery there is going to be, am I allowed to talk about this yet? Screw it, it's fine. It's probably my decision whether I can talk about it. I think we will be having an improvised David Lynch, a little late, but to kind of go with the, is it third season of...
Yes, Twin Peaks.
Twin Peaks, yeah, of course. It's the third season.
It is, yes.
Yes, yeah. Which I haven't seen any of, but apparently it's batshit.
Yeah, I loved... Did I love Twin Peaks when I watched it? Well, I watched it when it first came out, and it was the first programme that made me distrust the showrunners, if that was the correct term at the time, because I don't need all the answers in a TV programme, but I need to be confident that the makers of the show have the answers.
Right, yeah, they have a plan. Even if the plan changes,
yeah.
I want you to know, not like Lost, which apparently they used to read the internet discussions and then deliberately write away from any theory which one would have, which is why it was such a mess at the end.
Well, I never watched Lost.
You shouldn't. If from what you just said, you would hate it.
Because I thought, you know what, I won't watch it, and we'll get to the end, and if they wrap it up in a satisfying manner, then I'll get on board. And they did not, as far as I'm aware.
Have you? This is a ridiculous conversation to have on a podcast, but I've just started a 4th series of the American Killing, or season series, whatever it is. Yeah. You know, was it Danish? I feel like it was Danish.
Yes.
It's really good.
Yeah.
Non-spoiler spoiler. Have you seen the Danish version?
No, I haven't.
Okay, so so this is not even going to help you there. In the Danish version, watched it, loved it. Really hated who it turned out the killer was, not because it was bad television, because I was like, you can't make it that person. No, I don't want to. Oh, it is. That was really like emotionally crushing. In the American version, you sort of identify who is who translated, and then the killer is not the person who it is in the Danish one.
Right.
Which is one of the most. For me, the point where you work out that's true is one of the most end of Usual Suspects moments in television. Oh, I know it's that. Yeah, I know it's that person. No, it's that. Oh, wait, what? No. And then you have to watch a whole other season to find out who it is.
There was a similar thing with True Blood. And I'd read the Charlene Harris books beforehand, and there were certain things in there that the TV series played with your expectations, that you would only have that level if you'd read the books beforehand.
Right.
Which is, this is a fun thing to do.
It is a fun thing to do. But probably, I feel like they're a much more informed podcast to talk about television.
Yeah, you're probably right. So you mentioned Thursday Night Lights.
Yes.
And I find it amazing. We should perhaps talk about how it works and everything. But I find it amazing that people will come along to that who have never improvised before.
Yeah. It's kind of crazy. And they'll tell you after they've just done like a couple of scenes in front of an audience, and they say, "Oh, by the way, I've never done any improv." And it's testament to the skill of some of the improvisers that we get along that that's possible and works. Yeah, it's interesting what people find to be a low threshold, because for me, if I didn't know how to do something, I would go to a class in the hope that someone would give me the magic key.
I would do the Hoopla Beginners course at least 3 times.
Right.
Well, exactly 3 times, actually, in my case.
Is that what you did?
Yeah.
3 times.
It was brilliant.
Man, how bad were you?
Well, I'm pretty terrible. It just have to be said. But I did one with Edgar, I did one with Maria, and then I did one with Steve.
So that's pretty much 3 different courses anyway.
Yeah. And then I was terrified of performing. I loved doing the improv, but I was really, really terrified of performing. So the idea of doing a beginners and then going on to the performance one, I couldn't do it. But I was really enjoying it, so I just carried on doing the beginners.
Yeah, no, I totally hear it. When I was I didn't come through a course system because there wasn't one when I started improvising. But when I was first part of now defunct, I believe defunct, they might still be around, group called the Impresarios, which came out of the Guildhall School, I would be cycling to the gigs, which we had monthly in the student union room, the back of the student union bar, and I would Rolodex in my head ways in which I could get out of doing the gig that I was cycling to, and eventually conclude that the only way I could do it was by faking a bike accident or something, which you obviously can't do. So yes, I hear that. I totally hear that.
So, but people come along and they join in. There are 3 jams.
Mm-hmm.
One is a fairly straightforward 2-person, as if there's anything straightforward about a 2-person scene.
Right.
It's usually a 2-person scene.
Yeah, normally 2 or sometimes 3-person
Yeah.
scenes. There's just scenes, names from a hat, and then you do a scene, and then the round of applause, and then it kind of resets. So 3 jams of the scenes jam. There's a long form jam, which is where people get to play around with that sort of montagey, semi-Haroldy territory, although we're never that strict. So you use sweeps and tags and swarms and the occasional like hawk edit or some weird stuff.
What's a hawk edit?
I mean, it pretty much never happens, but
What's a
Alexis Gallagher used to talk about the most. Where someone flies in and like picks up a character and puts them in a different situation. It's basically like a pimped up version of a tag out. But yeah, in that section you can throw any sort of editing techniques from that school at it. And then we have the concept jam, which is also sort of a scenes jam, but we give a little bit of pepper to it by giving a concept over the top of it to either make your life difficult or push you into places where you wouldn't normally play.
I believe balloons were involved one week.
There was one blowing up balloons and then like stuffing them under your clothing in order to exaggerate your physicality like Buffon, and then just messing around with that.
You see, you've explained it. I thought, that sounds a lot better than what I just heard.
It sounds like a real thing. There was one, my favourite one, I wasn't there, but my favourite one I heard about was a concert jam which is entirely in French, even though one person in the 8 spoke French. So it's just stupid shit like that the sort of 4 or 5 of us who are generally running it come up with and throw at people, which is always super fun. So yeah, I think the thing which we do, which because we didn't want to just make another jam night. There are lots of great jam nights. There's the Hoopla one, there's Duck Duck Goose, the C3 one at the Millers. Lots of great places to just go and jam. Like, well, if we're going to do one, which we do want to do because we've got this lovely new space, let's make it different. And I believe we are not the only, but one of the only places to have the players warm up with each other beforehand. So you arrive at 7, you warm up, and then the show starts at 8. Show in quotes, because we wanted to semi-force, but like strongly encourage people to play with people that they don't normally play with, and this is a way of doing that. A lot of the times the teams, you have those 3 jams, which are 15 minutes long each. And then there's 3 teams, so you get 15 minutes long as well, 15 minutes set. And often people in the teams will play in the jams, and people, so it all kind of mixes together, and people get to meet and play around with different improvisers and people they've never met before. I guess that's one thing which is really important to the nursery style of improv, is that there isn't a wrong way, and part of the frustration of that is that also means there isn't a right way. So Joran Garguello, who's an amazing improviser from Chicago, well, not from Chicago, lives in Chicago, has a wonderful thing which he gets people to do in classes, which is he gets improvisers to ask each other, how do I delight you today? What can I do which will make the scene that you really want to be in right now?
Yes. That's a lovely thing.
Yeah, it's a lovely principle, and I got it from, sort of stole it from him last May, and if you used it, if it was a pair of shoes, it would be opening at the front like a little mouth. And I think that's the thing that I see at TNL in a really lovely way, that you see people of very different styles, whether that's personally or because of their training, still striving to do a goddamn improv scene rather than fighting to demonstrate that the way that they do it is better. That was more articulate than I was before.
Although I say that I find it amazing that people come along to jams, TNL in particular, and perform. Actually, that's probably reflecting my lack of confidence right when I started. Right, because it is. Yeah, it's if you're going to have a warm up with everyone beforehand, it's a great way to get on stage.
Yeah, because I've certainly been in those situations where you get called out as Jules and Federica, and I'm on stage and you shake hands with someone, hi, I'm Federica, and they're like, oh, now you're going to play a scene together. To me, that's weird. And I'm definitely on your end of the scale of nervousness, or it's not really introversion, is it? It's desire to be good before you are tested.
Yes.
And I guess maybe, that whole thing of you're always teaching the class that you should be going to.
Yeah.
Maybe what ended up happening is when Jonah and I were kind of hammering out what TNL was looking like, we were making the jam that we would have gone to, which is probably the case. It never occurred to me before.
Yes. And there are also drop-ins on Wednesday evenings and on Saturday afternoons.
Yeah. So we have those 2 drop-ins. We have a monthly free improv kind of taster session Sunday afternoon.
Puddle jumping.
And I think this will be the first public place that I've said this, but I think we'll probably be starting a drop-in class at the new space. Because that's not obvious if people haven't come across the nursery before. Our training centre is in London Bridge, and our theatre is in Broadgate, which is next to Liverpool Street. So they're in different buildings. So make a bugger feature, and we'll be starting a class up there in September. And then we have longer courses and international visitors, and all those things.
Cool. And so the Saturday, I get the impression, is generally more people who are near the beginner's stage.
I think that probably used to be the case when that was the class that you came to more often. You're more often here in the week now. I think probably the Wednesday and the Saturday classes are pretty similar. You'll get a wide spectrum of people who've never done any improv before in their lives and are either terrified or too confident. And you get people who've done it normally up to about a couple of 3 years, and then the occasional, I've been doing this for 10 years, but I'm just passing through town and wanted to do a class, which is lovely, a lovely thing. We tend to get Americans. I'd say like 1 or 2 a month. We get Americans who are like, oh yeah, I train in like Nashville in the improv society there, and I just thought I'd pass through and do an improv class. All right, cool, welcome.
I mean, the nice thing about the Saturday is that you finished at 4 o'clock and you can go to the pub afterwards, and it's not really late.
No, exactly. The number of times I've sort of not eaten because it's an awkward time of day as well. It's 1 to 4 in the afternoon. That's the only way it works. But quite often people will not have any lunch, go to the pub afterwards and realise that they're 3 or 4 beers in and they haven't eaten since 10 o'clock in the morning. And I can't help but feel slightly responsible.
Well, I eat beforehand and then when I get to the pub.
Smart. See, that's how to do it like a grown up, isn't it?
Cool. Right, so big finish question. Finish.
Oh, you did promise there was going to be a big
finish question. Tom.
Yeah.
What is the signature Jules Munns move on stage? What is it that you do and people go, classic Munns? What can you be relied upon to bring?
That's a good question. I think as a player I am most... My natural habitat is as a supporting player. So probably massively overcommitting to someone else's idea is probably like a cuckoo in the nest of someone else's idea. I will sit there and get larger and larger and larger until the idea falls apart. I think that sounds right. Grabbing onto something that someone's offered and powering for it. What's your signature move? Anyone ever asked you that before?
No, they have not. And I'm not very good when people suddenly ask me questions. I don't think I have a signature move, but I am very aware of trying to avoid getting trapped doing the same thing. So
right. I don't want to be chopping carrots all day. I want to be doing something else and filling out the scene. Is that what you mean?
That I went through a phase of playing child characters.
Right.
I think partly that was abnegating my responsibility to drive the scene.
Yeah.
So I've tried to stop doing that. And at the moment, I'm trying to work on being less agreeable. Not as a person or as an improviser, but as a character, because I feel I did the Showstoppers Improvers course, and in the showcase for that, I was cast as the villain of the piece, and I got to just be horrible to people, and it was somehow acceptable and delightful and made the show. So I'm working on, agreeing with people's offers, but not necessarily always playing agreeable characters.
Nice. It's interesting because on the nursery podcast, at the end of my finished question is always, what are you working on in your improv right now? And I find it very interesting how often people have an idea of their style of improv, which can be very far away from what other people think is their style of improv, not because they're inaccurate, but because often the thing that you think you do is what you are fleeing for in order to do improv. So it was very interesting. Jason Schatz, who you know of Dummy, was talking about how he started doing improv, and you can hear all this on the nursery podcast with Dummy, the second one. That he was like negative and kind of over talky and would kind of knock people's ideas down. And as you hear him describing the stuff, you ever seen him play or taken a class with him, none of that computes with the guy who's sitting in front of you, because Jason's signature move is yeah, like just a big nod and a smile and twinkly eyes and like this assertion. But obviously that negativity or knocking people down is the thing which he has got away from in order to get to the thing that he's doing, and improv has given him that massively over years. So it's interesting to hear you see the kind of to see what the axis is on which your improv is operating, between agreeability and cruelty, I guess, almost, isn't it?
Yeah, I mean, it's...
Because you are a very agreeable and likeable chap, and hooray, let's keep that.
Yes, I never want to lose that, but I also don't necessarily just want to play those characters.
Right, yeah.
I suppose if I'm going to be creepy or evil or nasty, I just really want to commit to that, because it's going to make it easier for the people I'm playing with if I'm really clear about what I'm doing. So,
right, and it's going to make it more fun for you if the point of view or the emotion or the attitude which you are playing in the scene is a choice rather than a fear-based default.
yes,
Or a habit-based default rather than
yes. I think you can play whatever you like, but if it's become a habit or you're doing it out of fear, then that's maybe something to work on.
Yeah,
Should be a choice.
I reckon. So I've got to get out of that habit too. Oh, great. Hate it when you come into a point of like, oh, there we are, conscious incompetence. Now I have to deal with that shit. Oh. I'm sorry, I swore too much on your podcast.
That's fine. I don't think you swore very much at all, actually.
Oh, that's refreshing.
Brilliant. Thank you very much.
Thank you, Stuart.
I made this.
That's improv!